No, this is how we I can't dance this, so I'll let you know. How you doing? You didn't realize the shadow changed, the shadow moved?
Yes, I'm ready for Thursday.
This is getting better every day. I know, I pass by every day. I just see more. You're doing a good job.
Every day is Fuck the Laporte Police Day.
I think it was Sean's.
They got the chief here, and they've got some extra officers. They knew I was coming, so they brought in some extra officers. Now, everybody pay attention. I want to show you guys something. Do you see all the people in here that are not wearing masks, despite the city of Laporte having an ordinance that requires them to wear masks when they come to these meetings? Now, all these people here not wearing masks. Pay attention to that. I'm going to show y'all something. So guess what I'm fixing to do? Done. Yes, and they knew I was coming to the meeting tonight. So they have some extra officers hiding in the back, and they have a detective here. They have a sergeant, and the chief of police is here in addition. All for little old me. You know, I'd have to wonder what they're scared of. Developmental Corporation Board, City of Laporte. Regular meeting. And yes, this is the city that I'm suing for $54 million. That lawsuit, I've got to get the Jersey Village lawsuit gets filed first, and then this one will get filed. We should have the Jersey Village lawsuit filed by the 1st of the month, and I would anticipate the Laporte lawsuit will be filed by late in the month or the 1st of July. Yes, 54 million. We're suing for 54 million. This sergeant over here was making traffic stops a little while ago, and I was observing his traffic stops. And he didn't seem to care for my being there. He didn't say anything to me, but he did not like it. Okay, and I am using something new here. I went ahead and broke week and bought a gimbal. I got one of the DJI Osmo gimbals. And so far I'm liking it, but I can't use it when I go live on YouTube, other than for stabilization. but I can't run it through the DJI app because or maybe there's a way to do it and I just don't know what it is. So I won't be able to zoom in and do all that kind of stuff. But when you're using the app, this thing is freaking awesome. I mean, it's like, seriously. But, you know, I never carried a gimbal because, you know, tyrants, when they grab me, always like to break my gear. And I just wasn't going to have anything that was that sensitive. But, and I still won't out in the field. But for little stuff like this, where I don't anticipate major problems, you know, I'll take a chance on, you know, some expensive gear. You know, and one thing I noticed is with this new phone, its photo capabilities are so much further ahead than what I've typically been using, that I needed a gimbal or something to really stabilize it. So that's why I got the gimbal.
Paybacks.
Who's now Texas instead of Laporte? Jeff, we typically don't name an amount. Zombie enforcement, this is an iPhone 12 Pro. We typically don't name an amount when you sue. You just kind of leave it up to the judge. But in this particular instance, you know, naming such a large amount will draw attention to the lawsuit, and that's what it's about. You know, get people in the community to pay attention to what's going on with their police department. Get more involved in making change. That's what it's all about. You'll never get that kind of judgment. There'll never be that much awarded. I know that. That's not what it's about. So one good thing, one observation I will make is that, you know, watching this sergeant over here making those traffic stops and stuff, I didn't see him write any tickets. So that's a good thing. Like I said, he didn't appear to like me being around there, but he didn't say anything to me about it. So. All this is hilarious.
Hey, sir, how are you? Good. Busy? Yeah, that's a good thing. Can't complain about being busy, man. No, sir. Beat the alternative, man.
A lot of them are the same.
Hey, sir. I'm not going to Vegas, man.
Yes, Jenny, I am by myself. That's why I went live instead of just recording it, doing static recording. I have my body camera rolling and I got the live stream running.
Hi, sir.
Howdy. That's interesting. So the police are telling people at the door they don't have to wear the mask. Even though the city ordinance is still in effect, they're telling people they don't have, the police themselves are telling people they don't have to wear their mask.
As much as we can, anyway.
Nobody knows that. And I don't carry my card. I'll call it the lady. And she didn't want me to call.
Double.
So I just let you know.
I like your place. I think this is working.
This is the City Hall, Jesse. Sean, I don't anticipate speaking. I'm here for something else. No, I'm actually, there's no seat over where, last time I was sitting over here, but there's no seat there, so I'm sitting about where Patrick was sitting last time. Oh, I know they're watching. Unlike a lot of you guys, the City of Laporte Police Department has their notifications enabled and their bells enabled so that when I go live, they know. They should be starting any minute now. They're supposed to be 6 o'clock. They're supposed to be starting the meeting. So it should be any second now. I know there's a clock in here somewhere, but. It's this guy over here with the beard on the left. It's one of the city council members that they're trying to run off because they don't like him, because he doesn't play by their rules. He actually has a brain and can think for himself. They don't like that.
I thought there was good saying, this is Shelley, my assistant director, playhouse, Bob Attorney. How was the traffic? Oh, it was easy. It wasn't bad? You have to come from the gallery? No, I'm not. Oh, wow. I can say, please call me. Hopefully this is going pretty smooth.
Yeah, important people.
We may have to.
I'm not filming anybody on purpose except people in uniform, whoever said that, and the city council. But if you tell me which one you're talking about, I'll be sure and focus on her. LOL. Yeah, it looks like everybody's getting here now, so they're fixing to start. And former Officer McCrae, I handed them a copy of your book, the city manager a copy of your book. I tried to give one to the chief and he refused it. Sure got quiet.
meeting to order at 6 p.m. If you so choose, please rise for the invocation given by Pastor Alan Neal from Life Community Church.
Thank you. Let's pray. Father, your word teaches us to give thanks in all things. And tonight we give thanks for the freedom that you provide for us and the responsibilities that you give to us to keep that freedom. We thank you for all the servants that are here tonight that serve this community. And Father, I pray that you might give them wisdom and insight and help in all they do and all the decisions they make. And we will give you all the glory, all the honor, and all the praise. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Starting with pledges.
We'll go to item 3 is a presentation, discussion of the annual report from the Economic Alliance Houston Port Region. Jason?
Mayor, members of council, you have Chad Burke before you tonight.
The thing I'm here for will come up in just a minute.
For the Economic Alliance.
You just have to get through this first part.
Mayor and council, appreciate the opportunity to present to some of you a second time, but always appreciate the opportunity to come out and give you an update on what's going on and really kind of dive into all the activities of the Economic Alliance. But before I do get started though, I do also want to introduce Karen Gregory. She's a new employee of ours. She's served on our executive board before in her role previous to actually coming to work for us. But her role is to work directly with all of our government entities so that we have a constant person communicating. In fact, one of the things that she's been there for a month or so, maybe a month and a half, she has worked with our regional city managers and is later this week, Thursday of this week, we're hosting a regional city managers lunch in our office. And Corby and a lot of the other regional city managers get together on a regular basis, and we felt like that'd be a good chance for us to kind of hear in what's going on with the cities and help facilitate that if they needed it. So she will be working directly with staff and any council members and mayor if you have any questions for us on that. I'll dive right in and try and move through this. As I said in the EDC meeting, please feel free to interrupt and ask any questions that you may have as we go through this. But it's a quick overview of kind of who we are, what we do, what's happening in the economy, and in those activities that we've been working on for the last year or so. So real quickly, our mission hasn't changed since 1985 when it was created, and that's to grow the regional economy. And that we do that through adding jobs and capital investment in the region. We support that with initiatives from our members that are lifted up as priorities, and that includes transportation or infrastructure. We'll talk a little bit about road and on the water and the port infrastructure work, workforce development with our high schools, community colleges, and industry to help get those people into those high-paying jobs and make sure that we're replenishing our workforce. Public policy at the state and the federal level, advocating for our members in this region and what's happening in this region, and then quality of life, working with our local communities to try and improve quality of life, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So that's kind of the strategy that we use. The footprint is pretty basic. It's the 25-mile stretch of the Houston Ship Channel, includes all the cities around it. The county is a member, the Port of Houston is a member, as well as about 250 companies that work in the region as well. Its impact to the state is probably the biggest of any single economic entity. It's about 21% of the state's GDP when you equate the value along the Houston Ship Channel. And that I use that slide and that statistic out of the Martin study that gets updated every 2 or 3 years to to show the importance that this region has on a state level when we need to advocate for this region. And that statistic alone helps carry weight when we are working on behalf of this region, whether it be in Austin or in DC, or sometimes in the greater Houston area. I'll move into a couple of quick slides just to kind of give you an update on what some of the activities are, COVID.
Mayor.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Sorry, this is loud. Can I ask a question? You, not used to these microphones, sorry. You just mentioned something about advocating in Austin, DC, and locally. Would you classify some of what y'all do as lobbying?
No, we're not registered as a registered lobbying organization. We don't have a PAC. What we do is just educate, and we take the message from this region, whether it be in Austin or DC. So it's not an official lobbying organization. We don't take funds to lobby.
As a layperson who doesn't necessarily know the definition of a lobbyist, help me understand better how that's different than what a lobbyist does.
There is, well, if you get paid to lobby, and I'm not a complete expert on it either,
Sure.
but if you get paid to lobby, you have to register with the state as a lobbying organization or a lobbyist, and we are not that. And so when we go up, we are delivering the message from the members on specific issues that affect this region. Is really all we're doing. We're not taking people out to dinner and twisting arms and things like that. We're saying, hey, this region would really like to see, you know, our cities be able to decide what their tax rate is, or decide, you know, what happens in their school districts or things like that. So it's more informative and educational, but it's always in the message always comes from our members, whether it be the city side, the port side, the industry side, and when we can find consensus on that, then we carry that message up to them.
And you find that consensus through people like us passing
Exactly.
proclamations of support or things like that?
Exactly. We have a public policy committee that all of our members are welcome to be part of, and we solicit issues that pre-session. So last year, pre-session, we were soliciting issues from all of our members to try and say, okay, what's going to be on the docket this year up in Austin that you guys want us to support you in? And so we just kind of gather that, we put that in a white paper that's normally a page or two long, that's got 4, 5, 6 issues that we want to support, and then we let those legislators know that. In fact, next month, pre-session, we'll have a meeting with our legislators and our members, and we'll deliver that to them, basically in front of all the members, and say, hey guys, we know you're going up there. They'll talk about what's important to them and what they think is going to happen, and we'll say, hey, here are the issues for the Houston Port region. These are our cities, these are our members. This is what's important to this region. Keep us in mind. And then next month, on the 22nd, in conjunction with our board meeting, we're having all of our state legislators back in front of us after the session for a wrap-up, so that they can report out, this is what we passed, this is what is going to affect the region. And so then it's Q&A, and then we can talk to them about it, and we can hear kind of a report out of what's happening. And again, everybody's invited to that. So, but yeah, good question.
Can you give 2 examples of things in the pre-meeting that you advocated for that the citizens of Laporte would find valuable?
Yeah, one of the ones critical to our cities in the last legislative session and then this legislation, there's been a theme in Austin where they want to basically similar to how sometimes DC will want to legislate what the states do. There's been a theme where some in Austin have wanted to legislate what our local cities have control over.
Like property tax reform, which was almost universally beneficial for our citizens, even though almost universally objected upon by governmental agencies. So if you're opposing that, then you're opposing what's best for our citizens, because in many of these instances, the state has advocated for the well-being of our citizens over the objections of local officials.
That's a good example of us having to rely on our elected officials to deliver that message to us. With 11 different cities, they're not always going to agree. And when we have issues that we can't you know, occasionally there are issues that different segments of the organization disagree on, and then we can't, we just, we don't make a statement on that then, right?
Okay.
But we do try and find consensus, we do rely on our elected officials, and our members that want to participate and deliver those messages to us.
Thank you.
Good. Moving into a little bit of kind of what's happening economy-wise. The chart you're looking at right there is large vessel movement, so it's a way of tracking the economy as far as the Port of Houston goes. You can see Houston, as of March, was down 13% over 2020. Through April, those numbers shifted a little bit, improved to about 12% down. And you think, wow, how are we doing worse than we did during COVID? But if you remember, the first 3 months of last year were record good months. And then if you'll look at, click this, if you'll look at this February, each February, you get a dip, and you'll see that on every single one of those year tracks. You'll get a dip because of fog. And this February, we also had the freeze, which not only shut down the port and its operations, but it shut down our manufacturing for most of a month. And when that manufacturing stopped, then a lot of the exports that Port of Houston ships out really slowed down considerably. The good news is March bounced back to a really good month, and April again shows a good movement. Both the pilots, the Port Bureau, and the Port of Houston are all anticipating a really strong 2021, and I would be surprised if by the end of this year we haven't surpassed 2020 and probably back on track to 2019 as far as moving goods in and out of the Port of Houston. And when I say the Port of Houston, I mean the greater Houston Ship Channel region. So, but we track that just to try and make sure that we're not missing something that might be happening. Another economic indicator for us in the Southwest region, this is volumes of gasoline demand and changes. Everything in blue is this year versus last year. Everything in red is this year versus 2 years ago, pre-COVID. So I'll point out us in the Southwest region, we have bounced back farther than most of the other regions with how we're doing this year versus last year. And then even if you look at this year versus 2019, we are closer to even than any other region. So this region's economy kind of helps continue to lead the way. So it's a good indicator to see kind of where we are. Let me see, let me scroll down here. The next set of numbers comes from Patrick Jankowski, who presented these to us in February, or March actually. This is the greater Houston area. We lost about 361,000 jobs from March to April during the beginning of the pandemic. We gained back 164,000, almost 165,000. January, there's a dip every year for people that work through the holiday season and then they get laid off. That's a normal sized dip according to his numbers. What it does though is it shows us that through March of this year, we still have 244,000 jobs to regain as in greater Houston region. And that may take us a couple of years to do that, depending on how the economy continues to bounce back. So it's good news and bad news, but we haven't gotten there, we haven't closed that gap completely. And this is the makeup of those 244,000 jobs. You can kind of see construction and business services, obviously restaurants and bars really were hit hard. I include that because that's one of our missions, is to add jobs to the economy through capital investment, through creating these projects to get them into our area. So that'll move us right into economic development. Our services include everything from site selection, real estate, data analysis, permitting, workforce programs, tax incentives, all the different things that help make companies want to locate here. The next slide shows our project wins in capital investment and jobs over the last 12 and a half now years. But you can see 69 total wins, over $14 billion and 3,500 jobs created. I will say this, I did not put it in a slide, but we do track what we do in each of our cities. Not every city is as fortunate as Laporte to be a fertile ground for large capital investment with your properties along 225 and Bayport, the Bayport area. We have had 20 jobs that we've worked on, projects that we've worked on over the last 13 years now, that have landed in Laporte. Some of the most recent ones include the Air Products job that we worked on this year, and even Horn Technology Services last year. But 20 project wins, $1.9 billion in capital investment to Laporte, and that equates to, in its specific tax district, wherever it is located, to over $6 million a year to the city of Laporte in taxable income. That's just on the 20 projects that we've worked on. That's not all the projects that have hit Laporte, but those are the ones over the last 13 years that we've worked on that have come to fruition. So I should have included a slide in that, but I always like to have that ready to talk about if we need to, because Laporte is one of really 3 cities in the entire footprint that has that kind of impact. It's Pasadena and Deer Park with its industrial district, and then Laporte. That really, there are some cities that don't have the ability to garner that kind of capital investment that really funds everything that the cities want to do. So it's a good place to be as a Laporte citizen. I tend to agree with that. Our project makeup, our pipeline. So if you're a salesman, you have a pipeline of projects that are sales that you're working on. This is our project pipeline. They're in the house right now. It's about 21 projects. Almost $7 billion. And the makeup is always interesting for us to follow, because it used to be about 66% petrochemical. That's dropped down over the last year and a half now to about 50%. And then logistics is either moving products, either through warehouses or terminals on the water. It's those types of logistic type projects. And that's grown from about 20% to 30% over the last 18 months now. The jobs that we work on in this region. Do you have another question, sir?
I have a question for you, Mayor. If I ask another question right now, that's the time. We get 2 times to talk, right?
Yes, that will be your second time.
Okay, I'm gonna wait. We're gonna come back. I'm gonna wait.
The good thing about most of the jobs in the petrochemical industry, it's a 7-to-1 indirect job creator. It also has Texas, and the petrochemical industry has the highest average salary. So there's good jobs, and not only good jobs for inside the fence, but it creates those indirect jobs that help support it, whether it's safety, whether it's scaffolding, whether it's lab work, whether it's the companies that feed the people out there through catering, things like that. So a lot of good indirect job creation. Infrastructure and transportation. I include this slide to show the importance of us moving people and products efficiently through this region. Mobile sources of emissions account for about 66 or 2/3% of our air emissions. And compared to when I grew up here, we're breathing a lot cleaner air than we used to. Our transportation committee, again, it's everything that we do is done by committees driven by our members. It's made up of our mayors, our industry, our port, the Harris County, TxDOT, and the Galveston HGAC. That committee has identified and prioritized 30 projects. Those projects have been worked with TxDOT and the county extensively over the last 3 or 4 years now. Those projects include things like the intersection of Beltway 8 and Highway 225, the entire reach of Highway 225, east and west, the 146 corridor that runs through Laporte. I contacted the mayor maybe last month when we got word that that project was going to be let this year. They had bumped it back several years because of the construction on the south section of 146 through Kima and Seabrook. They are making good progress on that, and then they called us and let us know early this year that I think I said September is when they have said they're going to let that project. So the Highway 146 section will be expanded from 2 lanes north and south to 3 lanes north and south through the Laporte section of 146. So that'll match not only what comes off the bridge, but it'll match the new development south of us as well. So good news there. As far as 225, as it flows into it, TxDOT initiated last year their planning, environmental and linkages study to cover the entire reach of 225, connecting it to 610 and 45 on the west side and 146, even into the intersection with Barber's Cut on the 146 side. So that's the first phase in about a 10-year project that will redevelop Highway 225 to try and get it up to speed, not only on, no pun intended, on the shape that it's in as far as driving down it and catching rocks and running over basically potholes, but then also address the capacity issue of Highway 225 as it goes east-west all the way from, like I said, 610 to 220 to 146. So that project came straight out of that committee. It was high on the priority list. TxDOT had not even taken a look at it. In fact, Quincy Allen, their director at the time, said, I did not realize how bad 225 was in need of repair. And so that came from that committee, which was made up of the stakeholders in the region. So good work from that. That'll be one of the landmark projects. We also are working on infrastructure on what happens on the water as well. This is a picture of a container ship that's about to meet another container ship. If you look really closely, you can see the buoy on one side and the buoy on the other side. They're 530 feet across. And as ship sizes have gotten larger after the Panama Canal expansion opened into 2016, once you get two ships in excess of 1,000 feet, they can no longer pass safely. And the port has to shut the traffic down to just one way. And when they do it one way, it's one way for 24 hours. And so if you've got goods that you want out, you have to wait a day, whereas, you used to could just, call up a pilot and get it out. So whether it's goods coming in or crude oil or petrochemical products going out, if we're losing time because of shutting the traffic down to one way, we are then at a very big disadvantage to competing ports along the entire Gulf Coast from Louisiana all the way down to Corpus. And so the answer is to widen that. The Corps of Engineers has finished a 4-year study on that. The Port of Houston has agreed to pay half of that project. They're working through how to get industry to pay for the other half of that project. It's been approved by the Corps of Engineers, as I said, and it's been approved by Congress in the Word bill last December. The hope is that they can work through the financing of the second half of that and get that project started before the year's over. So that we spent a lot of time in conversations with federal officials on the necessity to keep Houston competitive. You can see the reach where they're gonna expand that entire section out to 700 feet. So we don't have to do that. Again, policy, we touched on that a little bit earlier, but we'll work on white papers for the federal side and the state side. We've got bills that we're monitoring right now to see that we're gonna pass here in the last week of the state legislature. And then finally, a couple of quick notes that I wanted to let you know about. Our annual forecasting conference of the region, whether it be maritime or petrochemical, happens in September on the 23rd this year. We've got a full lineup of speakers from around the industry and around the country. We last year had to go virtual. This year we'll be live in the convention center. You're all invited to that. Last year, about 90 days prior to, we had to make the call to go completely virtual, and it ended up being a real big success. We basically gave it away for free instead of registration. We had 2,500 attendees that averaged about 4 hours apiece watching the conference last year. So we're going back live this year and hope to see everybody there again. And then finally, quality of life program. I want to make sure, we talked with the EDC about this prior to this meeting, but I want to make sure that the council was aware that we have, through our San Jacinto, Texas Historic District, we have matching grants that we want all of our communities and cities to use for quality of life projects. They can be beautification projects, they can be park-related projects, they can be, you can see things like the Bridge Over Troubled Waters. The Women's Shelter applied for a matching grant and got $5,000. Morgan's Point redid their water tower. We've got reading programs, we've got disaster relief programs. like I said, it can be anything that falls under the heading of quality of life for your citizens. And it's a C3, so we've been able to raise some money over the years. And the goal is to push that back out into the communities as they see fit where we can. So I just wanted to touch on that as we go around to all of our cities this year. We're making sure that everybody understands that. I think we gave away about almost $40,000 over the last 18 months. And the money's there for us to give away, and that's what we're trying to do with it. So that's it right now. That concludes the presentation. Certainly want to stand for any questions that you may have.
So, get you in 1 second. Lee, do you have a pencil sharpener or a sharper pencil? If,
We do have a pen?
Pen will work. Okay, thank you. Barely see my handwriting. Okay, so just going through your presentation a little. You had mentioned that if we go back to maybe slide 8, something about the services you're offering to the industry.
Kind of economic development
The
services.
economic
yeah.
development, yes.
Yeah.
Are you charging for these services, or is this built into, is this what we're paying for?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So we don't, if someone comes to us with a project, we don't go, okay, that'll be $5,000. It's just what we exist to do, so we don't charge anybody for that. And we're funded through all of our members and our private and public members, and then any money that we make on throwing an event, you know.
So I'm looking at some of these services. Traditionally, would these be services that a company would pay for?
Sometimes they can. There are some organizations that charge to do what we do. Not many. Most of them just are there. You know, regional economic development corporations do not normally charge companies to do that. Some are set up where it's kind of a pay-for-play thing. And so, but this organization's never been set up like that. It just, when your mission is to grow the economy, you shouldn't have your hand out, I don't think, to the guys that are considering bringing jobs and capital investment to the region. That's just a philosophical.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and then the assumption there is that you're not helping them go anywhere other than here.
No. Yeah.
So if you're in the middle of talks and they find a location out in Beaumont, then
Yeah, we say.
their services are done.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not helping them to, no, in fact, that's our competition.
Sure, okay.
Beaumont, Louisiana, Corpus, you know, that's the competition. And then overseas, obviously, we get jobs that are cited either here or Mexico, here in Singapore a lot, here in even China, and sometimes in Europe, but mostly it's kind of the Gulf Coast, or it's down in Mexico, or possibly over kind of in the Asian Pacific. Yeah.
You said that y'all have 20 project wins, totaling $6 million in taxes. Are you saying an annualized $6 million in taxes, or over that period of time?
No, so that's the neat thing about this. So anytime any of our cities gets a new investment into the city, they're paying property taxes every year.
Right.
So that's $6 million every year that comes into the city of Laporte. Now, we worked on all of these projects. I'm not saying every single one of those projects wouldn't have come, without us. I mean, sometimes it's helping them with permitting. These are just the projects that we worked on that actually came to fruition, that landed in Laporte. So I'm not up here saying, hey, because of us, you get $6 million a year, but you get $6 million a year, and we worked on these projects.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, and I was going to ask that clarifying question. So, can you think of any of these 20 that y'all were the main force that brought them here, or are y'all always a subsidiary force? They're already planning on coming here, they find you, they reach out, and then you help.
Yeah, it's always interesting, and what's interesting to look at is, because we keep a track of what you do on each one of these projects. Sometimes it starts with site selection. Sometimes we get a phone call, and for example, this was a few years ago. It was a Brazilian. They had no North American presence whatsoever. So sometimes it's, hey, we know what business we want to buy in and build in, and it was a specific chemical that they wanted to make, and so they asked us from scratch, who makes it in this region, and we'll consider buying them out. And they literally bought into the region, but they had no presence. So I remember they came down and their executives came up and they rented a helicopter that we flew around and flew over different sites. So it can be at the very front end, or it can be like the project with Air Products that's on this year's books. It's about almost $100 million project. It's in Laporte, it's on 225, it's a new liquid hydrogen plant. Well, they announced that that plant was gonna be built, and they've been working on it for a year and a half, building that plant. It comes online this summer, at least it's supposed to, in June. But they called us a couple of months ago and said, Harris County has instituted a new operational permit for all of our facilities, and we don't really understand what that means. We don't even know who to talk to over there. Can you broker a meeting with the Harris County Permit Department and our engineers so that we can figure out how to make this work? So we went through a series of meetings with them, introducing them and getting them comfortable with who at the county they had to work with, because their goal is to start moving product in July of this year. And so that was for Air Products, that was a significant lift for them, even though it's right at the end of the project. They were like, hey, we have no clue, and if this bungles up the thing, we're losing, thousands of dollars a day for not being in production. So it can be everything from the very beginning to the very.
Those 20 projects, are they all industrial, or?
That's a good question. I would say, just looking at them, almost all of them are industrial. There's some cold storage, there's some.
If a business contacted you, they wanted to open up a business on Main Street, would you help them just like you helped Air Products, or?
Yeah, no, we do. In fact, that's where working with our local city managers and or EDC staffs comes into play. So we have good relationships with all the cities, so we would immediately make a phone call, and that happens a lot. That really does. So we get something that says, hey, it's a $1 million project, it's not a $100 million project. We're immediately gonna connect them to the local city to say, okay, what do you need for permitting? What are you gonna need for, construction work or things like that? So no, we're not turning any of those small ones away, but what we wanna do at that point is leverage those relationships with the city to make sure that they know about it and have a chance to get that capital investment.
Last question. Your conference in September, can you commit right now to not require your participants to wear masks?
Actually, we were able to commit to that just last week.
Okay.
Because the conference center waived all of their restrictions, and so, yeah, our staff was very happy to see that came to fruition.
Well, thanks for advocating for it or fighting for it or even asking.
No, we would much rather go back to the normal world. In fact, we have two smaller events coming up this summer, one next month and one in July. We have a kind of women's leadership luncheon that happens in June at the Sylvan Beach Pavilion. Actually, both of these are going to be at the Sylvan Beach Pavilion. And we were able to kind of say, hey, if you want to wear a mask, you can wear a mask. We're not requiring anybody to wear a mask because that's what the standards are now. So we're very happy to see that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Karen. We'll go to item 4, citizen comments. Texas Open Meetings Act prohibits the members of the city council from responding to or speaking about any item that has not been properly posted. Comments should be directed to the council as a whole through the presiding officer. Insulting or slanderous language about any one council person or not may be cause for termination of speaking privileges and removal from the council chamber. Please step to the podium when you're recognized, state your name and address. Your comments will be limited to 5 minutes. Mike Shanahan.
My name is Mike Shanahan. I live at 200 South Virginia Street here in Laporte. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. Special thanks to Councilman Bentley, Angleton, and Lunsford for placing tonight's on tonight's agenda a proposal to change agenda publication time. Passage of this ordinance will be an overdue first step to help rein in a growing skepticism among many Laportians that city officials don't always act in the best interest of residents. Voting for this proposal will go a long way to prove otherwise. On a related note, I understand that on May 1st of this year, the city manager met with several Main Street business and property owners at an invitation-only meeting at the old City Hall. Although I own property and a business in the district, my name was not on the guest list. Why, I can only speculate. Main Street revitalization was easily the most contentious issue I can remember in my 40-plus years of living and working here in Laporte. I thought it had been euthanized years ago with the dismissal of then city manager Ron Bottoms. If it is being exhumed, fairness would dictate that all property owners and business owners in the district be included, not just those deemed worthy by self-appointed gatekeepers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marion. That's all that signed up to speak. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak that did not sign up? Pastor Dunn.
Sorry about that. Frank Dunn, 701 Sandstone Street here in Laporte. Just trying to be a help to some members of council. I just typed in here, what the definition of a lobbyist was. It was real easy to find. I just read it right here instead of listening to two men banter back and forth that aren't experts on anything like that and waste folks' valuable time. I noticed on the agenda this evening is your mandate or an ordinance for your mask mandates. I would highly recommend that you keep it in place. I think it'd be a real blessing to staff and to council and to our council meetings. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Pastor, would you fill out one of the yellow forms before you leave tonight? Thank you. Anyone else?
Mark Follis, 111 North Broadway. I guess I'm maybe the gatekeeper that put that little meeting together in a few days, but it was open to the public. We had flyers out at the restaurants all along Main Street, and everybody was welcome.
Thank you. We'll go to item 5, the consent agenda. Item A, approve the minutes of the May 10th, 2021 regular council meeting. Item B, approve an amended and restated economic development incentive agreement between the Laporte Development Corporation and Marianne Campisi and Vicky Campisi for the use of Type B Development Corporation sales tax funds for refurbishment, renovation of the old bank building located at 100 West Main Street in Laporte. Item C, authorizes mayor to sign an economic development services agreement with the Economic Alliance Houston Port Region for a 36-month term beginning July 1, 2021 and ending June 30, 2024, providing for a payment of $20,000 per year. Item D, approve a resolution of contractor authorizing the city manager to sign on behalf of the city of Laporte for the City of Houston's nutrition and transportation services. Item E, approval or other action to award bid number 21016, Northside Neighborhood Drainage Improvements Project, contract number 19-231-000-B675 to Tandem Services LLC in the amount of $291,716 with a contingency amount of $29,284 for a total authorization of $321,000. Item F, approve resolution 2021-44, authorizing the resale of tax delinquent property described as lots 21, 22, and 23, block 1114, town of Laporte. Item G, approve resolution 2021-45, authorizing the resale of tax delinquent property described as lots 36 and 37, block 1114, town of Laporte. Item H, approve resolution 2021-46, authorizing the resale of tax delinquent property described as lots 38, 39, 40, and 41, block 1114, town of Laporte. Item I, approve resolution 2021-47, authorizing the resale of tax delinquent property described as lots 32, 33, 34, and 35, block 1114, town of Laporte. Item J, approve resolution 2021-48, authorizing the resale of tax delinquent property described as lots 1 and 2, block 189, town of Laporte. Item K, approve resolution 2021-49, authorizing the resale of tax delinquent property described as south 1/2 of lot 20, Spencer Highway Estates, town of Laporte. Item L, approve resolution 2021-50, authorizing the resale of tax delinquent property described as Lot 1, Block 52, Town of Laporte. Item M, approve resolution 2021-51, authorizing the resale of tax delinquent property described as Lot 34, Block 52, Town of Laporte. Item N, approve resolution 2021-52, authorizing the publication of a notice of intent to issue up to $13.5 million worth of certificates of obligation bonds for planning, acquisition, design, and construction for new city facilities, infrastructure, and professional services. Item O, rescind the City of Laporte policy regarding the use of facial coverings for individuals in city buildings and facilities. And item P, adopt ordinance 2021-3830, amending the City Council rules of procedures and ethics policy with reference to face covering. Council, have any questions on any of these items? Mr. Garza?
A through P, I'd like to vote on them individually and debate each one individually.
You want to vote on
A through P,
A through P individually?
debate on each one individually and vote on each one individually.
Okay. Item A, approve the minutes.
I would like the minutes from the last meeting read so that we know what we're voting on. I would like them read so that we know what we're voting on.
Oh, this is
hilarious.
Only if we're voting on the entire minutes.
This is where it gets good, guys.
I have a, before you start, Lee, I have a question for Clark. Item 5 is the agenda request, agenda item. Does that mean Mr. Garza can only speak twice on the entire, or for each individual A through P? Thank you.
So then that means for statutory agenda, council people can only speak once for the entire statutory agenda? Twice, sorry. Can we have the rules of procedure read, that section? On the rules of debate, number of times a person can speak. And just for counting, this counts as one of yours, right, Mayor?
I'm sorry, what?
This counts as one of your times for consent agenda, correct?
Counts as one of my time?
Correct, you started a conversation with the attorney about what we could do, what we couldn't do.
No, I wasn't speaking about this item, I'm speaking about all items.
Okay.
It doesn't say per agenda item.
I think it does in there. I don't think we default to the rubber tool of order. This was something that the mayor added to our specific rules because he didn't want debate from particular individuals on council.
I don't know it's in there either, and I think then it's just a matter of interpretation. You asked me, my interpretation would be, since it's under one item, number 5, apply to the entire consent agenda.
So how many questions can be asked per agenda item, parliamentarian? You consider one question per agenda item, right? No, one question. I think I've confused the attorney. Parliamentarian, how many questions can be asked on a given item? Am I question, I mean, in the parliamentarian sense. A question has been asked, a question has been answered. How many questions can you pose?
There's not,
And voted on and approved?
there's not a limit on questions. The limit is on speaking time, speaking length.
Once a question has been voted on, is it not customary at that point to go to the next agenda?
So you're saying that once a question has been disposed of in terms of a motion has been made and handled and processed and,
Correct.
okay. But it is possible that there be more than one motion on a particular item. It's unlikely. But for example, if you have a motion to adopt an item, you have a motion for an amendment, you have a motion to commit to a committee, you know, there's not a limit on questions.
Okay, so then more broadly, you're the parliamentarian. Is 5A the same agenda item as 5B?
Not in my opinion.
Okay. And you would be the expert on the dais as far as that question is concerned?
The presiding officer is able to rule on any question procedure.
Correct, but if the presiding officer were to ask the expert on the dais, you would be that expert, not the lawyer, as far as the parliamentarian procedure for is 5A and 5B separate agenda items.
I don't think that's a question to me. That is an opinion in the eye of the beholder.
A parliamentarian opinion.
About who's an expert?
No, sorry. Is 5A and 5B two separate agenda items or one separate agenda item? That's a parliamentarian question.
Yes.
Okay. And you are the parliamentarian, chief parliamentarian for this dais?
Yes.
Okay.
But I am not the presiding officer.
Yes. So then the presiding officer can choose whether or not he would like to listen to the expert and recognize that 5A and 5B are different, or he can squash all debate in essence and say that 5A and 5B all the way through 5P are all the same item and overrule the parliamentarian expert.
The presiding officer exercises their discretion in presiding over the meeting.
Of course. Yep. Could y'all speak a little louder so the citizens can hear you conspire on?
I'm having a conversation with the parliamentarian.
And I had my conversation with the public. I think the citizens would like to know your next attempt at squashing debate.
I make a motion that we lay this item on the table and go to item 6C.
Is that an interrupting motion? I was already given the floor and we're waiting on the minutes to be read. So if that's not an interrupting motion, then I think we have to read minutes.
Pay attention, guys.
So all of the items have been, all of the items have been pulled from the consent agenda. You had asked that the minutes be read and then discussion.
So I was recognized, I was given the floor by the chairperson. And then I took the floor and I began to debate. And I asked for something to be done. And the chairperson is now making a motion to change that. So
He's made the motion to lay all of the items on the table, basically, to go to another item on the agenda.
and is laying on the table an interrupted motion.
It is not.
Okay, so then the mayor, according to parliamentary procedures, doesn't have the right to make that motion until I've lost the floor.
The presiding officer is the person in the meeting who would determine what is in order or not in order.
So what you're saying is the mayor can break
Yes.
the rules, but if we were to follow the rules, then we're on 5A and I still have the floor.
If someone objects to an action of the presiding officer, they can make an objection. The presiding officer can handle that objection.
Okay, so then, how do to do this. Point of order. You're supposed to say where you state your point of order.
Look at the mayor giving him death looks.
What is your point of order, Councilman?
Yes, I'll state my point of order, Mayor. My point of order is that as the chairperson, you're still bound by the rules that guide this council. And one of the rules is the Quorum of Debate. And the Quorum of Debate says that once a person has the floor, there's only specific types of motions that are interrupting motions. As the presiding officer, you don't get to waive that and decide you know better than our rules that we've adapted in Robert's Rules of Order. So the point of order is you are out of order, breaking the rules, trying to use something as an interrupting motion is not an interrupting motion.
Okay, and when you said you would like the minutes read, so you know what you're voting on, number one, that tells me you haven't read your agenda because the minutes are in there. And number two, you actually yielded the floor to the city secretary. And at that point, you no longer have the floor, so my motion still stands. And I have a second from Mr. Martin. So we're gonna lay that on the table. Lay item 5 on the table. We're gonna go to item 6C. All those in favor say aye.
Well, I think we're supposed to be able to debate on this, Mayor. The motion is debatable.
It is not.
Say that one more time.
Lay on the table. The
Okay, now you're
debate.
gonna follow the rules of the debate?
I'm sorry?
Now you're gonna follow the rules? So I don't have that paper in front of me. Is it debatable or is it not debatable?
It is not debatable.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we'll go to item 6C. Presentation, discussion, possible action to amend the city council rules of procedure and ethics policy. Jay?
Yes, Mayor. One moment while I pull that up. Mayor, it's been my observation that over the past year, I would say, that this council has been able to conduct its business in an orderly manner. And I don't recall a single time when a councilman had required more than 5 minutes, if that long, on any given item to speak to. Based on that, Mayor, I would make a motion that we reduce the time allotment per item from 10 minutes to 5 minutes, and still allow up to 2 times for a council person to speak to any item.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Martin, second by Mr. McCauley to reduce the speaking time per item, per council member to 5 minutes instead of 10, again, twice for each item. Comments or questions? Mr. Garza?
All right, so first, I'm a little confused. I do have the agenda, I did read the agenda ahead. Let me see. Presentation, discussion, possible action to amend city council rules, procedures, and ethics policy. And then when you look at the backup, it says, on May 1st, the voters adopted all of the recommendations of the Charter Review Commission. Once canvassed, the updates are in effect. The council may choose to include in its rules of procedure and ethics policy information to address how some of the items will be handled, such as councilperson absences from council meetings. And then there was an amendment. I think that's what the red means. Is that correct, parliamentarian? Additionally?
Are you looking in the, yes, that was
Okay.
the agenda.
So then in the amended agenda, it was added, additionally, council persons may wish to discuss and propose amendments to other portions of the document. So there's something called the Open Meetings Act, which prevents what seems to have happened here, which is a bit of a collusion by elected council people outside of the council meeting. It seems as if the mayor, you had this up your sleeve, that you knew that this vote was going to come and pass, because you strangely stopped us from talking about the consent agenda. You abandoned the rules literally changed the rules and then went to 5C. So is this agenda item designed to talk about the charter review or the rules for the charter review, or is this to figure out a way to silence a council person because you don't like what that person might say?
I have no idea what the question you just asked.
The root of the question is, how did you know that Councilman Martin was going to propose this?
How did I know he was going to propose this?
Yes. This is your agenda item, Louis Rigby. You put this on here. You knew this was coming because you stopped the discussion of the consent agenda, items A through P. So what I'm trying to figure out is, have you colluded outside of the council meeting and subverted the laws of the Open Meetings Act?
No.
So then how did you know he was going to propose this?
Did you see him raise his hand?
Would you stop the entire deal? You abandoned the rules.
Answer my question, Councilman.
What was that?
Did you see Councilman Martin raise his hand to speak?
I didn't. I was arguing with you.
All right. Then that answers your question.
But it doesn't, because you have to ignore the fact that you stopped us from looking at the consent agenda, thinking that there was an advantageous reason to get to this item. And it is clear now that that intent was to limit debate on those previous items. So how did you know that he was going to propose the motion?
I did know.
So what was your goal to go to 16?
You boys and girls need to go into executive session and get this crap fixed.
So what was the point of jumping to 16?
Questions have come up about our rules and procedures.
Okay.
So I put this on here to give everyone an opportunity to say what they needed to say and what they thought needed to be changed. Now, it seems to me that since you've missed the last 25 meetings, that you're going to try to get all your talking in this one meeting to make up for those 25 when you weren't here to represent your citizens of District 4.
You mean when you legally kicked me out of meetings?
There's nothing illegal about it.
We'll discuss that later. It was. And that'll be clearly demonstrated before the night's over. Are you saying that a council person asking questions, making sure that we understand what we're voting on, things like that, is something that you frown upon? Because I've made that argument this entire time that you do frown upon that you've made every attempt to squash debate, and it seems like you're wearing your true colors on your sleeve, doing everything you can to squash debate, actually literally saying that everything on the consent agenda is one item. A ludicrous notion that a hack of a lawyer sat here and agreed with, which is ludicrous. Can't even fathom the thought process behind that. But I just don't understand how we got to 6C and what you anticipated was going to come out. Ultimately, we don't determine open meetings violations, but these are recorded meetings, and the entities that do hopefully will be sent this, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to decide whether or not your behavior is appropriate or inappropriate, that you would completely abandon the rule of debate, skipping 15 some odd items in order to get to a random item, 6C, where just coincidentally, another council member proposes something that you find advantageous, and that will help you in the previous items. So maybe you'll be able to convince them that you have no idea, but I guess I haven't found you to be the most trustworthy person, so I don't trust you on this matter. But I will yield back however much time I have left in my 10 minutes.
All right, Mr. Martin, your motion was to change the rules and procedures, which is actually an ordinance that would have to be brought back at the next meeting, but you can amend your motion to say that you want it to count for this meeting as well. Just change it for this meeting, and then we'll change it for all meetings at the next, if council so chooses.
Then I would like to amend my motion so that these changes will go into effect for this meeting. And then we come back and make the changes necessary as you described.
Parliamentary decree motion can't be amended after a second it can't be changed, it has to be amended, so now we need another second for the amending, right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, misunderstood. I thought we were changing and then I realized we're just amending.
All right. So do I have a second on the, thank you. Motion to amend the original by Mr. Martin, second by Mr. McCauley, to change our rules and procedures to change the speaking time to 5 minutes twice per council member per item. For this meeting, and then it'll be brought back at the next meeting to change the ordinance. Questions or comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay by Mr. Garza. All right. Are there any other items and rules and procedures that need to be changed?
We haven't voted on the original motion, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other items and rules and procedures that need to be changed? Okay, we'll go back to the original motion. The amended motion. I can hear you. All right. Now voting on the original motion, all in favor say aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Mr. Garza. All right, we'll go back to item 5. Item A, City Secretary, please read the minutes so Mr. Garza knows what we're voting for.
Minutes of the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Laporte, May 10th, 2021. The City Council of the City of Laporte met in a regular meeting on Monday, May 10th, 2021 at the City Hall Council Chamber, 604 West Fairmont Parkway, Laporte, Texas at 6 p.m. with the following in attendance. Councilpersons present: Louis Rigby, Brandon Lunsford, Brett McCauley, Chuck Ingleton, Bill Bentley, Thomas Garza, who left at 6:01 p.m. Jay Martin, Robbie McLaren. Councilpersons attending remotely, none. Councilpersons absent, Trey Kendrick. Council appointed officers present: Corby Alexander, City Manager; Lee Woodward, City Secretary; Clark Askins, Assistant City Attorney, attending remotely. Number 1, call to order. Mayor Rigby called the meeting to order at 6 p.m. Mayor Rigby reminded Councilperson Garza that the Council's adopted rules of procedure require councilpersons to wear a mask during council meetings. The mayor reminded Councilperson Garza that he had the opportunity to attend the meeting electronically and could go to his office in City Hall. The mayor asked the Sergeant-at-Arms to remove Councilperson Garza. Councilperson Garza moved that the council oppose the mayor's direction, which he termed as illegal. The motion did not receive a second and was not considered. Councilperson Garza left the room. Number 2, invocation. The invocation was given by Reverend Brian Kristen, Laporte Community Church, and pledges were led by Councilperson Jay Martin. Number 3, election matters. Item A, presentation, discussion, and possible action to adopt ordinance 2021-3827 to canvass the results of the May 1st, 2021 general election for the purpose of electing a mayor, a councilperson District 2, and a councilperson District 3, and the special election for the purpose of adoption or rejection of proposed amendments to the City of Laporte Charter. Louis R. Rigby, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Ingleton moved the adoption of ordinance 2021-3827 to canvass the results of the May 1st, 2021 general election for the purpose of electing a mayor, a councilperson District 2, and a councilperson District 3, and the special election for the purpose of adoption or rejection of proposed amendments to the City of Laporte Charter. The motion was seconded by Councilperson Bentley. The motion was adopted 7-0. Item B, swear in newly elected councilpersons. Louis R. Rigby, Mayor. City Secretary Lee Woodward swore in the newly elected mayor, Louis R. Rigby, Councilperson 2, Chuck Ingleton, and Councilperson District 3, Bill Bentley. Mayor Rigby presented the certificates of election. Item C, presentation, discussion, and possible action to elect a Mayor Pro Tem, Louis R. Rigby, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Ingleton nominated Councilperson Jay Martin. Councilperson McCauley seconded the motion. There were no additional nominations. The motion was adopted 7-0. Number 4, presentations, proclamations, and recognitions. Item A, proclamation, National Public Works Week, Mayor Louis R. Rigby. Proclamation, Emergency Medical Services Week, Mayor Louis R. Rigby. Item C, proclamation, National Police Week, Mayor Louis R. Rigby. Item 5, citizen comment. Thaddeus Fine spoke in support of the Laporte Police Department in search of Memorial Day events and in support of House Bill 749 on lobbying. Item 6, consent agenda. Item A, approve the minutes of the April 26, 2021 regular session and the April 6, 2021 special session of the Laporte City Council. Louis R. Rigby, Mayor. Item B, adopt resolution 2021-43 authorizing the city manager to accept and execute the TxDOT Click It or Ticket CIOT grant award and other documents for the TxDOT Click It or Ticket STEP grant. Steve Deardorff, Chief. Councilperson Engelken moved to approve the consent agenda. The motion was seconded by Councilperson Bentley. The motion was adopted 7-0. Public hearings and associated ordinances. Item A, the City Council will hold a public hearing to receive comments regarding recommendation by the Planning and Zoning Commission to adopt Ordinance 2021-3822, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Laporte, Chapter 106 zoning by granting special conditional use permit 20-91000003 to allow for a residential and commercial development to locate on a 56.7 acre tract of land legally described as lots 1 through 33, block 1267, Laporte subdivision, tract 1M, abstract 35, J. Hunter survey, and tracts 5 and 5L, abstract 30, W.P. Harris survey subdivision in the planned unit development PUD zoning district, followed by discussion and possible action to consider adopting ordinance 2021-3822, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Laporte, Chapter 106 zoning, by granting special conditional use permit number 20-91000003 to allow for a mixed residential and commercial development to locate on a 56.7 acre tract of land legally described as lots 1 through 33, block 1267, Laporte subdivision, tract 1N, abstract 35, J. Hunter survey, and tracts 5 and 5L, abstract 30, W.P. Harris survey subdivision in the planned unit development PUD zoning districts. Teresa Evans, Director. Planning Director Teresa Evans provided an update on the project following the TERS meeting and approval of the development agreement for the same. Mayor Rigby opened the public hearing at 6:30 p.m. Alan Mueller, a representative of Gromax Development and History Maker Homes, spoke in support of the amendments to the STEP. Deanne Thompson, HOA President, Lakes of Fairmont Green, asked a number of questions about and spoke in opposition to aspects of the project. Maggie Anderson, HOA President, Bay Point Townhomes, spoke in opposition to including any commercial development in the project. Mayor Rigby closed the public hearing at 7:12 p.m. Mayor Pro Tem Martin moved to adopt Ordinance 2021-3822, approving and amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Laporte, Chapter 106 zoning, by granting special conditional use permit 20-91000003 to allow for a residential development only with no commercial development permitted to locate on a 56.7 acre tract of land legally described as lots 1 through 33, block 1267, Laporte subdivision, tract 1M, abstract 35, J. Hunter survey, and tracts 5 and 5L, abstract 30, W.P. Harris survey subdivision in the planned unit development PUD zoning district, with additional residential conditions that townhouses shall have a minimum lot area of 1,870 square feet. The minimum lot area shall be 5,000 square feet. The minimum width shall be 40 feet, and the number of dwelling units shall not exceed 5.5 dwelling units per acre, and uses shall be limited to single-family detached only. The motion was seconded by Councilperson McCauley. Without objection, an amendment to Councilperson Bentley was accepted to require a masonry wall on the project property along Wharton Weaves. The motion as amended was adopted 7-0. Item 8, reports. A, receive report on the Drainage and Flooding Committee meeting, Councilperson J. Martin. Mayor Pro Tem Martin announced the committee received updates on the Harris County Flood Control District projects and that the committee chose to meet again on June 14th. Item 9, administrative reports. Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, May 20th. City Council meeting, May 24th. Zoning Board of Adjustments meeting, May 27th. City Manager Corby Alexander introduced Lindsay French, who is overseeing Parks and Recreation and will be restarting senior programming, noting French has been successfully leading areas and parks for a number of years. Item 10, council comments. Hear announcements concerning matters appearing on the agenda, items of community interest, and/or inquiries of staff requiring specific factual information or existing policy from the mayor, council members, and city staff, for which no formal action will be discussed or taken. Councilpersons congratulated the newly elected mayor and councilpersons and expressed their appreciation for those who received proclamation recognition this evening. Congratulated Mayor Pro Tem Martin on his election, expressed appreciation to city staff for their expertise and work, And the mayor mentioned that the recent Harris County Precinct 2 food distribution in Laporte he had volunteered at, noting how much it was needed and appreciated by residents. Adjourned without objection, the council adjourned at 7:34 p.m.
Any questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to accept the minutes as read.
Do I hear a second? Motion by Mr. Bentley, second by Mr. McCauley to approve the minutes of the May 10th, 2021 City Council regular meeting. All in favor?
Mayor, I'd like to request a roll call vote.
You just,
It takes 30 seconds.
we've been requested to have a roll call vote. Mr. Ingleton? Mr. Bentley? Mr. McCauley? Mr. Garza?
Aye.
Mr. Martin? Mr. McLaren? And I vote aye. Motion carried.
Is Mr. Lunsford absent?
I'm sorry?
I thought Mr. Lunsford was on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Brandon? Aye. Thank you. Item B, approve an amended and restated economic development incentive agreement between the Laporte Development Corporation and Marion Campisi and Vicky Campisi.
Is someone here to talk to us about this?
Looks like the builder just left, so we can certainly do our best to answer your question.
I'm sure you can. Why is this in front of us?
So this is in front of us. It is a development agreement that was approved by both the EDC and City Council. The development agreement had a couple of benchmarks, one of which had a timeline for substantial, what we call substantial completion, as well as a capital expenditure amount. And the deadline was May the 15th. They are not complete. And, when we took the item to the EDC board was agreeable to give a 2-month extension. We don't believe that they'll need that much time. They've been working pretty diligently to get the project done. Just they've had some things like going in favor in terms of getting it done when they hope to.
So no monetary amount change, anything like that, still the same deliverables, just delaying the required completion date.
Just giving them more time well, 2 things, giving them more time to reach substantial completion, as well as giving us more time to cipher through their expenditures to make sure they comply with the expense component of their benchmark.
Sounds good. I'd like to propose a motion.
Yes, sir.
What words does Lee want me to say exactly? I move that we approve an amended and restored economic development incentive agreement between the Porte Development Corporation and the Campisis for the use of Type B Development Corporation sales tax funds for refurbishment, renovation of the old bank building located at 100 West Main Street in Laporte, Texas.
Here a second. Mr. Bentley. Motion by Mr. Garza, second by Mr. Bentley to approve an amended and restated economic development incentive agreement between the Laporte Development Corporation, Marion Campisi, and Vicky Campisi for the use of the Type B Development Corporation sales tax funds for refurbishment, renovation of the old bank building located at 100 West Main. Any questions or comments?
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I would like the agreement that we're voting on read.
I'm sorry?
I would like the agreement we're voting on read.
Amended and Restated Economic Development Incentive Agreement between the Laporte Development Corporation and Marion Campisi and Vicky Campisi for use of Type B Development Corporation sales tax funds. That agreement made by and entered into the 24th day of August 2020 between the Laporte Development Corporation, a Type B nonprofit corporation operating under authority of the Texas Local Government Code, Chapters 501 and 505, hereinafter LPDC, and Marion Campisi, hereinafter referred to as recipient, is hereby amended and restated as follows. Witnesses. Whereas the voters of the city of Laporte authorize the levying of additional sales tax within the city for promotion of economic development, and the LPDC is authorized to use such tax revenues for certain qualifying projects and other economic development related purposes. And whereas recipient is a Texas-based commercial development company that specializes in rehabilitating underutilized commercial buildings. And whereas recipient wishes to renovate the exterior and interior of the building located at 100 West Main Street and make associated site improvements for the purpose of operating a mixed-use commercial and residential facility, and which would, one, result in the expenditure by recipient of an estimated $650,000 in capital improvements, and two, employing an estimated 4 full-time personnel. And whereas recipient has requested that LPDC provide financial incentives to the recipient to contribute towards the cost of renovation of the property at 100 West Main Street under a qualifying project of the LPDC for infrastructure, site, and related improvements as authorized by Texas Local Government Code Chapters 501 and 505, and it is the desire of LPDC to assist in the funding of same, finding that such expenditures will promote or develop new or expanded business enterprises. Whereas Texas law and the bylaws of the LPDC require that certain expenditures and projects by the LPDC be approved by the governing body of the city, and whereas the LPDC board has duly approved such project, and the expenditures for same have been authorized by the Laporte City Council, now therefore in consideration of the covenants and conditions stated herein, and in consideration of the mutual benefits that will accrue to each of the parties hereof, as well as to the citizens of the city of Laporte, Texas, the parties have agreed and do hereby agree as follows. Article 1. In consideration of recipient renovating the existing structure at 100 West Main Street and operating a mixed-use commercial and residential facility at the subject site, parentheses, building herein, close parentheses, which proposal was considered in that certain public hearing authorizing a proposed project for the expenditure of LPDC funds for the promotion or development of new or expanded business enterprises, held before the LPDC on July 27, 2020. LPDC agrees to provide the recipient an incentive package consisting of a cash payment and a total sum not to exceed $85,000 to be distributed in 2 increments of $40,000 and $45,000 each, with each distribution conditioned on the attainment of certain performance thresholds, more specifically outlined as follows. Number 1, a cash incentive payment in an amount equal to $40,000 will be distributed to recipient by LPDC upon A, receipt of LPDC of proof of substantial completion of renovation of the building, and B, proof of minimum capital investment in the amount of $650,000 applied towards renovation of the building and related infrastructure and site work, exclusive of the cost to recipient to purchase the existing real estate tract and vacant building. However, in no case will the $40,000 payment be made by LPDC if documentation substantiating 1, substantial completion of the renovation of the building, and 2, the expenditure of no less than $650,000 applied toward capital improvements to the building is not delivered to and received by LPDC by July 15, 2021. In the case that proof of substantial completion of renovation of the building and minimal capital investment of $650,000 applied toward capital improvements to the building is presented to LPDC on or before said July 15, 2021 deadline, the LPDC shall convene a meeting of the LPDC Board of Directors for a date no later than 45 days after the receipt of proof of substantial completion of the renovation of the building and minimal capital investment of $650,000 by LPDC from recipient. Upon verification of the substantial completion of the building and minimum capital investment of $650,000, as reflected by formal vote of the LPDC Board of Directors, that recipient has satisfied the requirements of this paragraph, LPDC will then remit the $40,000 to recipient within a period not to exceed 30 days. In the case where recipient fails to submit proof of substantial completion of renovation of the building and proof of a minimum capital investment in the amount of $650,000 by the July 15, 2021 deadline, Despite being disqualified for the incentive payment, recipient will remain eligible to qualify for receipt of the $45,000 incentive payment under paragraph 2 below, insofar as the conditions preceding for permanent employment of 4 positions as established in such paragraph is met. However, in such case, recipient will be required to submit proof of substantial completion of renovation of the building in order to qualify for the incentive payments outlined in paragraph 2 below. 2, a cash incentive payment in an amount equal to $45,000 will be distributed to recipient by LPDC upon delivery to the LPDC of an employment roster evidencing that entities leasing space within the building cumulatively employ a minimum of 4 full-time employees at the building site as of August 31st, 2021. However, in no case will the $45,000 payment be made by LPDC as proof of the employment of a minimum of 4 full-time personnel as of August 31st, 2021 is not delivered to and received by LPDC by October 31st, 2021. Proof of employment for purposes of this agreement may be satisfied by submission to LPDC by the said October 31st, 2021 deadline of A, copies of building site lessee's 941 report to the Internal Revenue Service, and C3 report to the Texas Workforce Commission for each employee, open parentheses, but with social security numbers of each employee redacted, close parentheses, and B, a notarized statement executed by building site lessees, affirming that a cumulative 4 full-time employees are employed in positions permanently located at the building site. In the case
Mayor, sorry to interrupt. Are we not reading the amended one? I just realized we read the old date. Of course, they're not going to ask us to go back and start over anything, but the July 15th, what we're amending here is switching out the July 15th in the subpoint 1.
No, what we should be switching out is to July 15th. That becomes a new benchmark.
Oh, it's May.
Correct.
It's almost
Correct.
June.
Correct.
Okay, I was thinking it was almost July. Sorry.
Yes, correct.
Sorry to interrupt. Just want to make sure we're reading the right thing. I think we're at the second paragraph on 3.
In the case that proof of employment of 4 full-time personnel is presented to LPDC on or before said October 31st, 2021 deadline, the LPDC shall convene a meeting of the LPDC Board of Directors for a date no later than 45 days after receipt of proof of employment by lessees at the building site by recipient. Upon verification of employment as reflected by formal vote of the LPDC Board of Directors, LPDC will then remit the $45,000 to recipient within a period not to exceed 30 days. In the event the recipient qualifies for the $45,000 incentive installment based upon proof of employment of 4 full-time positions by lessees located at the building site pursuant to Article 1, Paragraph 2 above, then in such case, recipient shall be required to prove the continuous employment by lessees at the building site of a cumulative minimum of 4 full-time positions for a continuous 5-year period. At the conclusion of each calendar year during such 5-year period, beginning on December 31st, 2021, through and including December 31st, 2025, recipients should be required to submit to the LPDC proof of employment of a minimum of 4 full-time positions at the building site in the manner required under Article 1, Paragraph 2 above. Should recipient fail to provide proof of the employment of 4 full-time employees at the end of the calendar year, then for that year, recipient shall be responsible for remitting to the LPDC the sum of $17,000, representing recapture out of the previously awarded $85,000 incentive paid under this agreement. However, in the instance that the recipient provides proof of employment of a minimum of 4 full-time positions at the end of a calendar year, recipient shall be relieved from the obligation to remit to the LPDC $17,000 recapture for that year. If recipient fails to qualify for the $45,000 incentive installment provided for in Article 1, Paragraph 1, but qualifies for payment of the $45,000 payment under Article 1, Paragraph 2, then in that case, the obligations of recipient to maintain the continuous employment of 4 full-time personnel at the building site shall continue to apply, but in the case of failure to maintain employment of 4 full-time employees at the building site, shall subject recipient to the requirement to remit to the LPDC $9,000 as recapture out of the previously awarded $45,000 incentive paid under this agreement instead of $17,000. Article 2. All funds received as herein provided shall be solely for the purpose of contributing toward recipient's cost in the renovation of the exterior and interior of the building located at 100 West Main Street and for the making of associated site and infrastructure improvements to operate a mixed-use commercial and residential facility. Recipient further acknowledges that the incentive grant provided for herein is tied to a project of the LPDC for the promotion or development of new or expanded business enterprises, as authorized by Texas Local Government Code Chapters 501 and 505, Article 3. Disbursement and or retention of the cash incentive identified in Article 1 of this agreement shall be made as follows. A, disbursement shall be made to recipient subject to the satisfaction of the conditions preceding or conditions subsequent contained within Article 1 of this agreement. B, LPDC's obligation to recipient shall not exceed $85,000, nor shall LPDC be obligated to reimburse recipient for requests delivered to LPDC after the termination of this agreement. Article 4. Recipient understands that the funds paid to recipient by the LPDC are derived from tax revenues collected under Texas Local Government Code 505.252, and that the LPDC has estimated the tax revenues to be collected during the term of this agreement. Recipient further understands, acknowledges, and agrees that if the tax revenue actually collected is less than 90% of the estimated tax values to be collected in any fiscal year during the term of this agreement, LPDC will be under no obligation to provide funding to recipient for any payment or payments during or after the fiscal year for which there is a revenue shortfall. Upon execution of the agreement, funds will be placed in the City of Laporte designated commitment account for purposes of this agreement. Article 5. In the event of any default by recipient hereunder, including but not limited to use of the funds provided herein for purposes other than those stated in Article 1 of this agreement, LPDC may cease all future payments hereunder and terminate this agreement. In addition, LPDC shall have the right to reclaim and recapture, and recipient shall refund any funds that are not spent in accordance with the terms of this agreement, including 1. LPDC funds spent by recipient in contravention of this agreement, and 2. Any LPDC funds previously paid to recipient but not yet spent by recipient. In each such case, the previously paid cash payment or payment shall be remitted to the LPDC within 60 of receipt of written demand for same. Any breach of this covenant shall be grounds for immediate termination of the distribution of funds. Article 6. The term of this agreement is for a period beginning on the date of approval by LPDC and ending July 31st, 2126. Article 7. All funds provided by the LPDC pursuant to this agreement may be used only for the purposes authorized by this agreement. Notwithstanding Article 1 above, city shall be under no obligation to make any fund disbursements if the reports required under this article have not been delivered to the LPDC. Article 8. This agreement does not create any joint venture, partnership, or agency relationship between the LPDC and recipient. Recipient shall have exclusive control of and the exclusive right to control the details of the work to be performed by recipient hereunder, and all personnel performing same, and shall be solely responsible for the acts and omissions of its officers, members, agents, servants, employees, subcontractors, program participants, volunteers, licensees, and invitees. In no event shall any person participating in or performing any of the recipient's duties or responsibilities hereunder be considered an officer, agent, servant, or employee of the LPDC. Article 9. Recipient agrees to assume and does hereby assume all responsibility and liability for damages sustained by persons or property, whether real or asserted, by or from the carrying on of work by recipient or in the performance of services performed and to be performed by recipient hereunder. Recipient covenants and agrees to and does hereby indemnify, defend, and hold harmless LPDC and all their respective officers, agents, and employees from all suits, actions, claims, and expenses of any character, including attorney's fees, brought for or incurred on account of any injuries or damages, whether real or asserted, sustained by any person or property by or in consequence of any intentional or negligent act, omission, or conduct of recipient, its agents, servants, or employees. Article 10. This agreement may be amended by the mutual agreement of the parties hereto in writing to be attached to and incorporated into this agreement. Article 11. Recipient shall adhere to all local, state, and federal laws and regulations that may affect its actions made pursuant to this agreement, and shall maintain and effect during the term of this agreement any and all federal, state, and local licenses and permits which may be required of recipients generally. Article 12. Recipient may not assign this agreement or any of the benefits provided herein, including but not limited to incentive payments identified in Article 1 without the written consent of LPDC. Article 13. The waiver of LPDC of any breach of any term, condition, or covenant herein contained shall not be deemed a waiver of any subsequent breach of the same or any other term, condition, or covenant. Article 14. The obligations of the parties to this agreement are performable in Harris County, Texas, and if legal action is necessary to enforce same, venue shall lie in Harris County, Texas. Article 15. This agreement shall be governed by and construed in accordance with the laws of the state of Texas. Article 16. This agreement may be executed in triplicate, each of which shall be deemed an original and constitute one and the same instrument. Article 17. Neither LPDC nor participant shall be required to perform any term, condition, or covenant in this agreement so long as such performance is delayed or prevented by force majeure, which shall mean acts of God, civil riots, floods, or any other cause not reasonably within the control of LPDC or recipient, except as herein provided, and which by the exercise of due diligence, LPDC or recipient is unable, wholly or in part, to prevent or overcome. Article 18. By submitting this application, the applicant whose signature appears below confirms its intent and commitment to comply in full with section 2264.052 of the Government Code, and certifies that it does not and will not knowingly employ an undocumented worker during any time period associated with the public subsidy for which the application is being submitted. The applicant further certifies its understanding and agreement that if it is convicted of a violation of 8 U.S.C. section 1324A.F, providing for civil and/or criminal penalties for engaging in a pattern or practice of knowingly hiring or continuing to employ unauthorized aliens, it shall repay the amount of the public subsidy with interest at the rate and according to the terms of the agreement signed under section 2264.053 of the Government Code, not later than the 120th day after the date the city notifies the business of the violation. Article 19. The agreement embodies the complete agreement of the parties thereto, superseding all oral or...
Have you made a motion here?
Oh, did I not make a motion?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
I thought I did.
Wrong
Mr.
one.
Bentley seconded.
Yes, sir.
It's missing a word in Article 5. I guess it's really good that we read this as a group. At the very end, it says, in each case, the previous paid cash payment or payment shall be remitted by the LPDC within 60 of receipt of written demand for same. So I propose that we add the word days after the word 60 there, as currently it has no unit of measurement.
Okay, that's obviously a typo, and we can fix that without the amendment.
Oh, we don't, okay. But aren't we voting on what was just read?
I'm sorry?
I thought we were voting on what was just read. I don't know how this works exactly, I thought.
Yes, but we can add the word days after 60 without amending and taking another vote.
As long as the lawyer says it's okay,